What's going on, guys? Welcome to another video. In today's video, we're going to be answering the question of how much design do you need to know as a developer, and more specifically, how much design do you need to know as a front-end developer? Do they expect you to walk in and know Photoshop, Adobe XD, Sketch, Figma, Balsamic, Illustrator? I know I was missing one, but do they expect you to know that? No, not really, not like to do the job. So TLDR. I also have a design file that I got from a real interview that I helped someone with yesterday, converting a PSD, Photoshop design file, for those of you who don't know, to HTML and CSS. This is actually a really common interview question. I was going to get it at my last job where I was a front-end developer by title, and actually in the interview I said, can I see the Sketch? That's what she was using. Can I see the new UI? And then I opened up their laptop, opened up the inspector, and I started doing changes on the fly. And I guess I got to skip that portion because I was like, yeah, this is totally doable. Yeah, let's definitely do this. Anyway, just a little anecdote for you, but that's what we're gonna be looking at in this video. I'm doing a giveaway for my resume and cover letter pack. All you gotta do is be a subscriber and leave a comment on the video, and I'll pick somebody and announce them in the next video. And if you haven't already, head on over to twitch.tv/JoshuaFluke, where I'm currently streaming. Look at this quality content that you're missing out on. Have you ever hired someone that's just completely bombed like a whiteboard test? And they just somehow were like, look, I know this was terrible, but let me explain why you should still hire me. Oh, and by the way, I'm doing giveaways on Twitch too, at the beginning and at the end of every single stream, except you get to pick whatever you want from the shop. So that's the twitch.tv benefit. Head on over to twitch.tv/JoshuaFluke. I will see you there, featuring Oko, the goodest dog. All right, real quick, before we jump in, there are two websites that I need you to go to and make accounts on: Behance and Dribbble. Where are you going? Anyways, go to dribbble.com with 3 B's. It used to be invite only, where UI people could only invite other UI people, but they took that away. It's a place where people go to post their UI UX portfolios, mock-ups, wireframes, stuff like that. And then you have Behance, which I think is owned by Adobe, but it's for similar purposes. Even if you never post anything in there in your whole developer career, go there, take a look at what people are doing, and maybe even ask yourself the question of, could I convert these images or these wireframes to code? Hey, Sue. Where you at? Come here. I need you for testing. Come up here. Up. I need you for autofocus testing, please. I appreciate you. You're free to go. Okay, let's talk about 3 important things in UI UX. You got wireframes, you got mockups, and you got prototypes. Let's talk about wireframes first. Go to the websites that I mentioned previously, Behance and Dribbble, and go see if you can find some. Generally, they're just kind of a basic layout of what the website is gonna look like. Are you gonna have 2 columns? Are you gonna have a header? Are you gonna have a footer? What happens when you click this button? Does it take you to a new page? Does a modal pop up? Like, just basic UX, basic layout of the website, no pictures, no colors, typically in a wireframe. And these are important. You need to know these. And you're like, well, why do I need to know these? Well, it sets you apart as a candidate. If you can go to a UI UX person and say, I don't think that this is going to work, you can save the company dev time and thus save them money. And I know you're supposed to get as close as possible as you can to their experience and their design, but in reality, sometimes when you're deving and the design, it just doesn't match up. They had an idea for a modal of what they wanted to do, and then you're like, actually this doesn't happen. There's 2 separate steps due to the library that we're using or third-party API that we're using that requires X, Y, and Z. So these are going to have to be modified. And if you can go to them before that and tell them that and save them time, save them money, boom, you just set yourself apart as a candidate. So I recommend looking into wireframes. Definitely learn about those. Okay, let's talk about mockups. Mockups are probably the most important as a front-end developer if you're doing this on the job. And a mockup is just a picture, just an image, PNG, JPEG, Photoshop design file. It's going to be your job as the developer to go wherever those images are stored and convert those to code, HTML, CSS, whatever it is that your stack is. Also, mockups are very common interview questions. They'll usually send you a Photoshop design file, or sometimes not. Sometimes they'll just send you an image, and they'll give you a time limit. Here's our picture. You have 60 minutes. As soon as you click this link, the timer starts. And I've had a few of those, and let me show you the one that I was talking about earlier. Let's actually take a look at that. So what you're looking at right here is a real code test. They gave them an hour to do it. This was 2 days ago, and it came just like this, with these blue lines and everything. If you don't know what these blue lines are, these are ruler lines, and if you look up top, you can see these numbers, and they help you space things when you go to make this into code. And you can drag more down if you need. So if you click up here, you can drag more lines from the left, from the right, and so if you need help with alignment or to need to know how many pixels something is and all of that. So ideally, if you could make something like this responsive as well, this looks like a desktop layout to me. If you could make it responsive, that would be thumbs up. If you use a library, it's not indicated that you needed to, but that would probably be a thumbs up. And that's it. It seems easy at first. You're like, oh yeah, I could make that. But then you're like, wait, how do I do a menu with a sub menu? And then I got 2 columns here, and then we have these things are kind of like breadcrumbs that would go here for navigation. You got to get the colors right, and so you got to know how to use Photoshop in this regard. So you'd have to come in here with your ink dropper, figure out what this is, come over here to the left, click this, and then you can see your hex code, so you know what you would need to do for CSS in that regard. Same thing for these. Like you're like, well, how do I make these bars? Well, these are just horizontal rays, I think it's called. Then you up the color and the thickness, and that's basically how you do it. And then you're like, oh, well, I would need these icons. So you can actually come in here and you can figure out things yourself. This is what it looks like in terms of layers. You can see the fonts that they're using and all of that. And so you would have to take all this and find these fonts online or Google or get as close as you could to them and then recreate this. And this is also what you do on the job. It doesn't have to be just for interviews. We didn't have Photoshop design files like this with the rulers and the spacing and all that stuff. We just had a picture. And then if we needed to know the color, we had to use our Chrome extension to come in here and do a little eyedropper and figure out what the color was, or we just have to open up Slack and be like, hey, what font is this again? What are we using? Or we'd have a design guidebook that we could just open up like a little PDF that would tell us our basic colors that we're using, our basic fonts that we're using, if we got headers, what size headers. So you can see that this is a little bit bolder and this is a little bit thinner, and this is a different font entirely, or maybe this is an image, how are you going to go about that? And you can kind of debug in this regard. So in terms of Photoshop, you would need basic knowledge like I'm showing you now, just to look up colors and fonts and stuff like that. And then last but not least, we have prototyping. And there's a couple prototyping tools that come to mind right away, which are InVision and Marvel. If you don't know what a prototype is, it's when you just take the mock-ups and you make it look like it's a functional app, but it doesn't actually, it's not coded, doesn't do anything. And so you go to one of these apps like Marvel or InVision, and then you layer the pictures and you select conditions. So if your image has a button on it, you'll like highlight the button, and then you'll select a condition that says, okay, on click, show this image or show this little modal image. And it makes it look like it's a fully functional app. And this is how startups can like pitch their idea and stuff, because they're like, oh, wow, this is what would happen. But again, if you have some forethought about this, you can be like, well, I don't know if this would actually work. And they might even be like, all right, well, can you do something better? Like show us how it would actually work. And the software is pretty straightforward, pretty easy to use. And you can go try it yourself if you want. I think Marvel has a free version. Yeah, anyways, you can go try that yourself if you want. But again, I think it's important to know about these. Do you have to know how to use Sketch? Not really. But you might need to know how to use Zeppelin, which is an extension of Sketch. So Zeppelin takes Sketch files or mockups and it exports them, and you'll have like you'll have an image, but when you click on it, it will kind of show you the fonts and the colors, and it will kind of it will do the best it can to convert the image to code for you. It doesn't convert it to code, it just converts the spacing and the padding and all that stuff. It tries to convert that for you, which can be helpful. So that's one thing that you might need to know about. But other than that, that's really it. You're not going to be sitting in there designing, but it's good to have some knowledge about it so that you can bring it to people. You might be wondering how I know so much about all these applications and their extensions and all this stuff about design. And well, it was my job. That's what I did at my last job, but I didn't know it before I got that job. I actually had to learn on the job like you do with most programming related jobs. They gave me a Skillshare account. I went on there and I learned about it, which coincidentally Skillshare is also the sponsor of this video. So thank you so much for that. They gave me a link actually. The first 500 users that click it get 2 months free, so you can check that out. The link is down below in the description. But yeah, I went on Skillshare. I learned about Zeppelin and Sketch, Adobe XD, wireframing through there, and Photoshop knowledge. So the Photoshop knowledge one was pretty important, because go back like 2 years ago and look at my thumbnails, it's bad. And then come to today, and I don't think they're great, but like clearly they've improved. So I don't know, I learned on the job, and that's how I did it. So if you're interested in Skillshare, the link for that is down in the description. It's been worth it for me, so no shill. But anyways, if you enjoyed the video, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.